This conference will now be recorded.
And we'll wait about another minute or two as people are hopping on the call, and we'll start at maybe 11:33. We'll get started, so hang tight until then. Good morning, everyone. My name is Krista Ross. I'm CEO at the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. We're going to be discussing New Brunswick's Advanced Small Modular Reactor Program. And our members have expressed a lot of interest in learning more about this opportunity, so we're happy to share it with you. Just a few things before we get started. I'd like to ask everyone to put your microphone on mute and turn off your video if you're not presenting. And you might want to go to the top of your screen and change the setting to view presenter. I think it says view who's talking. And we'd also encourage you to use the chat function if you want to submit questions. And final housekeeping item is that we're recording this, and we're going to be sharing the video afterwards on the Chamber's social media channel. So if you know of other business owners or individuals who might be interested in learning more about the New Brunswick Advanced Small Modular Reactor Program, we would encourage you to share that on your social media as well. So we are excited today to be joined by members of the recently formed Atlantic Clean Energy Alliance. The webinar is going to be moderated by Colleen D'Entremont. She's the president of the Atlantica Center for Energy. Along with Colleen, we have representatives from NB Power. We have Paul Thompson. We have Quinn Chen from Moltex Energy. We have Norman Sawyer from ARC Nuclear Canada. Jesse Graham is with us from Opportunities New Brunswick. And the Vice President and Chief Nuclear Officer at NB Power's Point Lepreau Nuclear Generating Station, Brett Plummer, is with us as well. They're going to walk us through some presentations just so that we can create some awareness of this great opportunity. So one message I'd like to leave you with to think about as you listen to the presentation and engage with these presenters is it's not just a construction project. It's really the creation of a new sector for New Brunswick where we can say we're the hub for advanced nuclear small modular reactors. New Brunswick is where the research and development can be done. New Brunswick is where we can manufacture advanced reactors. This is where people can come and learn about advanced reactors. It's really an opportunity for all businesses in New Brunswick in terms of supply chain and overall economic benefit. And we believe this initiative has the potential to help rebuild New Brunswick's economy. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Colleen D'Entremont, President of Atlantica Center for Energy. So over to you, Colleen.
Thanks so much, Krista. That was an excellent introduction. It really, really talked about the essence of what we're going to be doing here today. So we are pleased to provide you with an update on the progress of New Brunswick's development and deployment of advanced small modular reactors. We strongly support the development here in New Brunswick of the advanced SMRs in order to provide stable, non-emitting electricity generation. We think it's a real win-win-win for New Brunswick, for Canada, and quite frankly, for the whole world. Other clean energy technology does require SMR development. This non-emitting baseload generation complements intermittent renewable generation for the electricity grids of the future. So welcome. In New Brunswick, the provincial government, as well as the provincial utility, are supportive of SMR development. So Premier Higgs, Minister Holland, Minister Wilson, they've all publicly stated their support. So we're going to start this session with Paul Thompson, who's a Deputy Chief Nuclear Officer at NB Power, to explain sort of New Brunswick and NB Power's fit into the pan-Canadian SMR approach. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Thank you very much, Colleen. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk to everybody today. If we could have the first slide, please. Okay, and maybe put it on to the second slide. There is interest in small modular reactors pretty much right across the country. And this is fueled in part by the fact that nuclear needs to be an essential part of climate change solution. And small modular reactors can offer advantages over new build of the current generation of plants. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Recognizing this, Natural Resources Canada convened a Pan-Canadian committee back in 2018 to establish a roadmap for the development of small modular reactors. And since that time, the industry has been working cooperatively into developing an overall plan for development and deployment of small modular reactors. This got a tremendous boost in December of 2019 with the signing of an interprovincial memorandum of understanding on SMR's development and deployment by the premiers of New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. The next slide, please. Because small modular reactors come in different sizes and different applications, there was a need to develop an overall approach to how we can develop these new types of technology. And so what the industry came up with was 3 different streams. These would all be being developed in parallel with equal priority and importance. And I'll just walk you through the streams, and then we're going to come back and focus on stream number 2, which is the center of our presentation here today. Stream 1 is a small modular reactor that would be connected to the grid. So it's on the larger side, up to 300 megawatts. And those would be the type of technology that's almost readily deployable, such that it could be deployed at the Darlington Nuclear Station by 2028. This could then lead to a de-risking of a subsequent project in Saskatchewan to avoid the building and construction of additional gas plants. So this is a route to relatively fast decarbonization of the electricity grid out west. Stream 2 are also the larger size of the small modular reactors, and they are the advanced class generation 4 small modular reactors being developed right here in New Brunswick. Now, these technologies bring additional benefits above and beyond those associated with Stream 1. However, the deployment time is a little longer, somewhere into the early to mid 2030s. The third stream is at the very small end of this small modular reactor spectrum. And those are for resource development like mining, where there's no electrical connections, or remote communities in the far north. New Brunswick supports all three streams, but we're concentrating on stream number 2, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The next slide gives some background as to how we got involved in this. And as part of our overall energy planning, New Brunswick started looking at how we were going to address some of the ongoing challenges with regarding demands, asset management, and also greenhouse gas reduction. And as part of that, we naturally looked at potential of adding additional nuclear capacity to the existing nuclear capability that we have right here at the Point Lepreau generating station. And the more we looked at this, we started to recognize the advantages of this emerging technology in small modular reactors, and in particular, the advanced generation 4 types of technologies. Based on a technology review that was performed, we identified 2 great companies, Arc Nuclear Canada and Moltex Energy Canada. And through discussions with the provincial government, they took the visionary and bold step to establish an R&D cluster for advanced small modular reactors and invested $10 million. Arc Nuclear and Moltex Energy joined this cluster and also invested $5 million each. The next slide shows some of the activities that have been happening in the 2 years since. The vendors have set up offices here in St. John, New Brunswick, and have progressed various aspects related to their planning of their projects through to design, research and development, some of which is being done here at the University of New Brunswick, and also going through the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission's vendor design review process. One of the key and exciting things is the supply chain assessments that they've done in terms of what are the potential capabilities of manufacturing components and modules right here in New Brunswick. Engagement is also a very key activity, and they've been very involved with those as well. MB Power has been working alongside these vendors, both in our own project planning and in looking at what additional environmental studies may be needed. And we've been very engaged in engagement. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We believe it's very important to begin engagement activities very early. So while we do not have a specific project per se declared, it is very important to get out well in front and talk to all of these types of communities, such as our First Nations, the surrounding communities, and people and organizations right across the province, so they can understand what we're considering, what the benefits are, and so that we can learn, hear and learn, and actively act on some of the feedback that we're getting. This engagement builds upon the great relationship that MB Power already has out in the communities, as well as the specific nuclear related engagement that is done in association with the Point Lepreau generating station. The next slide articulates the vision that we have, and that is to establish a supply chain right here in New Brunswick and also the rest of Canada to demonstrate the feasibilities of these technologies at the Point Lepreau generating station. This is then the stepping stone for a larger fleet deployment in other areas of Canada, and more importantly and largely impactfully in the international markets. And this is made possible through the many advantages that advanced generation SMRs have. And that's shown on the next slide. So why do we think advanced generation 4 reactors are so special? And why are we so interested? Well, like all nuclear power plants, they produce a clean form of energy, which is a necessary part of the climate solution. But the remaining bullets that you can see on this slide are specific to the advanced generation 4 type of reactors that both ARC and Moltex are designing. They have inherent safety characteristics and passive safety. And by that I mean the reactor physics itself and its chemistry provides a high degree of safety. So for example, if the reactor gets too hot, it shuts itself down automatically without the need of additional systems. Because of these strong safety characteristics, less systems, less complex engineered systems are required to achieve the same level or even greater level of safety. Thus, the design can be very much simple compared to the existing types of technology. The simplicity in design has a major impact in reducing the cost of a new build, which also means that they're much more affordable for utilities and provincial governments to be able to adopt. These reactor technologies have the potential to recycle their fuel and thus produce a lot less high-level waste. And we're hearing from Canadians that this is very important. Although we have a good story for managing long-level waste, it still can be better. And so these reactors offer a significant benefit in this area. These reactors have superior load following capabilities and can thus support an increased use of renewables on the grid. They also produce superheated steam, which allows for cogeneration of both electricity and process heat, which can be used for industrial applications, whether it's, for example, like oil sands or for refineries, or production of hydrogen, which is a tremendous fuel source for the future. And because the parts and design is so simple, it means that a greater amount of those components and systems can be manufactured right here in this province, resulting in tremendous economic growth of a new sector. So on the next slide, here is really the opportunity to grow a new sector and not just experience a one-time construction project, which in themselves are good, but this a new sector growth is far better. And that has a positive spin-off benefit on all businesses right here in the province. So we encourage you to reach out, to learn more, and provide us our feedback. And if you're in support, please speak out. Thank you very much. And I'll now turn it over to Mr. Norm Sawyer, the President and Chief Executive Officer of ARC Nuclear Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. We're going to get our presentation up here. There. I hope everybody can see this. So yes, my name is Norman Sawyer, originally from Rexton, New Brunswick, moved away a number of years ago and worked in the industry for close to 40 years now. Came back to New Brunswick a couple of times, and I'm really happy to be leading the ARC Nuclear Canada effort here in New Brunswick. And really, ARC Nuclear Canada is really a technology company that's put together a significant partnerships, world-class partnerships with companies like GE, AECOM, and Worley to work on our technology, to bring our technology to market. As Paul mentioned earlier, the technology that we bring obviously is low emission, much like our great facility here at Point Lepreau, very low emission, none essentially. And matches up very well with renewables. So it helps us assist with wind and solar, depending on the province's outlook. We have a plan, and we've been working with our partners, MB Power, for some time now, since essentially 2018, to develop our plan. And as you can see, a lot of things have happened. We've gone through the first phase of a regulatory review, and we successfully completed that. We've had some supply chain roundtable events with Indigenous peoples, with companies from local companies, and we are focused on local involvement. And as we work our way towards our date of somewhere between 2028, 2030 for the first unit to be online at Point Lepreau. The company grows. As you can see here, as we continue to grow, we are looking to build our company. We've done a lot of organizational development here in the last 6 to 9 months. We want the company to reflect the province. Therefore, we're looking for diversity. We're looking for First Nations peoples to be working with us. We're looking for bilingualism. We want the company to reflect New Brunswick because we want to be a New Brunswick company. And as you can see here, we'll grow over the next 6, 9, 10, 12 months. Another additional 32 staff will come on board as we move into the next phase of our project. And what that means is not only staff, it means economic benefits for regions because, as I mentioned earlier, we have significant companies working with us. And what that means is overall, the staff will grow by 75. Our offices are in St. John, New Brunswick currently, but our office is too small, so we'll be expanding that office or moving into a bigger one. But also we'll be adding a new office for AECOM Canada. We've negotiated with them that they would move into the region for the starting of an additional 25 more people. Worley, who some may remember, Worley actually purchased Atlantic Nuclear from the Fredericton region at one point. They have an office in St. John, and that office will be growing by another 10. And we are currently negotiating with GE. As we get to them to have their office in the local region also. As Paul mentioned earlier, inherent safety and waste reduction is really what it means in our technology. It means that the power of the reactor naturally controls itself. So in other words, without any human intervention, the power output will go down if the temperature goes up. So you get away from a lot of these big events. And that is very important because what that means, it can be built much differently. So what we do is have systems that are very, very easy to build. So therefore, there's, the strategy is the manufacturing can be done in the province, most of it. I'll talk about that in a minute. But also it matches up very well with things like renewable energies, like wind power, which is very intermittent and cycles quite a bit. We can do that either directly with our little reactor, or we can bring in what's called heat storage or tanks that maintains heat and is used as required. We are also very well matched up with hydrogen production, chemical production, industry, and around the world, desalination is an issue for which our units can be used to make clean water. The technology, as I mentioned, is the proven one. It's the only SMR out there today that has 30, 35 years of history behind it. The prototype ran for a number of years. As I mentioned, it was demonstrated, and it has been validated as the technology that's ready to move forward by the World Nuclear Association and MIT studies that occurred that just said that it's a mature concept and it's ready for deployment. What's interesting about waste, as Paul mentioned, is that obviously you want the public is looking for safety, being safer. Our little reactor is safer. Our little reactor does, the public is also concerned about waste. Our little reactor deals with waste in a number of ways. First of all, if you compare a typical CANDU reactor today at equivalent amount of energy, they would produce somewhere around 20,000 used fuel bundles, where our reactor, over 20 years, excuse me. So our reactor is only fueled every 20 years. The CANDU reactor is fueled 4 or 5 times a week. So in 20 years, we would only produce equivalent 184 CANDU fuel bundles going forward. And what we can do is reconstitute, which means essentially recharge, and then we can run another 20 years on with 184 CANDU fuel bundles, and then we recharge again and we run another 20 years. So we get 60 years lifetime out of these little reactors, but the waste reduction is significant. And it does give options in the industry today. So if you go across the top, that's the current approach for which the industry today is producing either the technology that's running today or newer technology. It produces used fuel, and the current approach is to store it very safely, as Paul mentioned. However, Our little reactor, as I mentioned, runs, if you go down the bottom line, it runs for 20-year fuel cycle. So the first thing you do is you reduce significantly the volume and the radiotoxicity to the point where you're reducing it from thousands of years to a few hundred years. And then, as I mentioned, the second option is actually you recycle it after 20 years and you use it again in the next run. There's also an option 4 on the lower right-hand corner you'll see is we can delay that up to 100 years as per the concepts that are being developed here in Canada to store used fuel. We can wait up to 100 years and just recycle it. But it also gives us option 3, which is important. It will deal with dealing with the spent CANDU fuel at Point Lepreau, for example, or other fuels. So this little reactor gives Canada a number of options, or any country for that matter, any province going forward. And that's what's kind of key to the ARC technology. It's proven, it's inherently safe, and it does a lot with waste reduction. And that's the whole approach we've been talking about. From a supply chain perspective, we've looked at our technology, and we currently estimate somewhere around 74–75% of all the parts and pieces that we need can be fabricated in Canada. However, what's really interesting after our research we've done, our first phase of our research, and we're going to continue to do more, with no investment, 51% of that could be fabricated in New Brunswick. And we believe with some investment, that number can even go higher. Across Canada, that's somewhere around 110,000 jobs. And what's interesting is that the CANDU nuclear industry today, it currently provides around 76,000 jobs. But I think most people recognize most of that is in Ontario, and we're not trying to exclude any province. We're just trying to include New Brunswick in this case. We have a number of companies working with us today and providing us great service over time. So, for example, UNB does a lot of work with us, and I'm really happy to announce that UNB has just won a grant to work on some of our fuel R&D work, and I guess it's MITAC it's called. But they've been doing some work with NRCan, or the Government of Canada, and their labs outside Hamilton, and doing some fantastic work for us as we continue to move forward. We've also had, from a security perspective, Oro is a company that's been working on high-end security, information technology security, and we've been in discussion with the University of Moncton to promote their abilities in that area. The supply chain is really important in the next phase. In our next phase that we go through is we'll actually be identifying key suppliers after we've done our phase 1 research with some reviews and some audits, and we'll be integrating them into our supply chain. And we fully expect the supply chain to be functional somewhere between 2023 and 2024, because as you remember the plan I showed you earlier, the construction of the unit would start somewhere around 2025, 2026. So a lot of things that would happen. But what's really exciting for the province is the central fabrication facility. The selection and design would come through this next phase as we look for, since we export this to not only other provinces in Canada, but around the world, we will need a port of sea, because you can ship these things by sea or by land with trains or trucks. So we'll be doing a lot of analysis in the next phase. And there's obviously the Port of St. John, but there's two other ports. There's Port of Beldoon and Port of Dalhousie also that will be in our selection process. Cost-wise, the public is always interested for the cost, and I just so this is a report that's produced by Hydro-Quebec, and it looks across Canada what different cities in Canada pay for electricity. So you can see at the top end, the Nova Scotia Renewable Energy Program, which is essentially the underwater hydro, for lack of a better word. They pegged it at 53 cents. Muskrat Falls currently is somewhere around 23 cents, although we don't know with this federal government subsidy what that will do. But you can see Point Lepreau refurb at 8.2 cents, and then you see the ARC 100 predicted, estimated currently somewhere around 6-7 cents currently. So it's very well placed for energy costs for the province. So as Paul mentioned, I always go back, and I'm a CANDO guy. I spent my whole career in CANDO, and I mean the CANDO is a great facility at Point Lepreau and has done tremendous things for the province. However, there is one piece of the whole thing that kind of didn't stick in New Brunswick is the supply chain and the manufacturing. And I think that this program that we're bringing here to New Brunswick is much different than the original one. It's based on indirect and direct jobs. And ONM&A, essentially what that means is people working at the plant. And it's also based on construction jobs. But it also brings the supply chain and manufacturing jobs that's required. And that really needs employment and economic growth. And not only will the province get low cost electricity, not only will it get clean energy for hospitals, households, and manufacturers, and the electrification of transportation, but it will get a lot of economic growth. It will get spin-offs. It will get tax dollars to pay for our social programs, for our hospitals, for our medical system. That's what this whole program is about. So it's more, as Paul mentioned, than just a construction job. It is an opportunity for the province. And I wrote an op-ed here earlier this week when I talked about technology development can really bring opportunities. And this is what our project brings. Thank you. Over to Moltex. Quinn?
Thank you, Norm. Okay, so thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to introduce you Moltex. So I'm Quinn, I'm the VP of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs of Moltex Energy. Can we go to the next slide, please? So people ask, who is Moltex? So Moltex Energy, we are a clean energy technology developer, and we try to develop a technology that can provide low cost clean energy and reduce legacy nuclear waste and enable more renewables at the same time. So how can we do that? And we have this patented molten salt technology, which you can find a lot of good stories about this molten salt technology from either our website, or you can find a lot of recent published papers or books about that. But our approach is to develop the next generation of nuclear technology that can do clean energy and reduce waste and enable renewables at the same time. Can we go to the next one? So how do we enable more renewables into the grid? We know that the solar power and wind power, sometimes they generate excess energy that cannot be used by the customers. And our technology has intrinsic capability of storing electricity or heat into our reactor. So when you have excessive energy from the renewables, we can store it. When you have a peak load requirement from the customer, we can release those energy in a very fast way. So with Moltex technology into the grid, we actually can enable more solar and wind power. Next one, please. And so one of the barriers from the public point of view of developing nuclear energy is the waste. And a lot of people do not like the idea of burn it and bury it. So we call that a one-through fuel cycle. And we're actually doing a closed fuel cycle. If you think about the Moltex technology, we're not going to burn any fresh uranium from the mine and generate nuclear waste. We're actually burning the existing waste that was created by CANDU reactors in the past 30, 40, 50 years. And we're burning that waste to generate electricity without generating additional waste. So, so that in fact will reduce the existing legacy waste. Can we go to the next one? And in terms of the cost, if you can see the bars on the figure, that over the time, the cost of nuclear has been increasing drastically since the 1970s all the way to this point. And on the right side is the cost estimate for our technology, and we're drastically lower than the competing water-cooled reactor technology because we're using this patented molten salt technology. Can we go to the next one? And this is important because we're trying to provide clean energy to everybody. So a lot of people in this world cannot afford expensive clean energy. If you look at this figure created by EPRI, and it predicts the market share for nuclear under different cost estimation. And if we can drive down the cost of nuclear to $2,000 per kilowatt, I'm talking about the generating capability, and nuclear can actually occupy a half of the energy market. So people will be in a very good position to decarbonize the economy. So that's what we're focusing on, is to provide affordable clean energy to everybody. Next one, please. So what's going on here in New Brunswick? So we have partnered with NB Power and the government of New Brunswick to build our first reactor in New Brunswick. And so we have been working with NB Power and University of New Brunswick to develop this technology in the province. And UNB actually plays a very important role in our technology development. And we have been working with Professor William Cook and his team in UNB, and they're setting up a nuclear technology research center in Fredericton. So in the long run, we can have this technology developed by the faculty and students of the university. And that also gave us the a long-term competitive edge because we have this technology developed in the local community. So at this time, we have an office of 15 more staff members in St. John, and we're also working with our partners across the province to get the work done. So we have been working with companies in St. John, Fredericton, and Mountain, and they have been helping us a lot on all those engineering and research activities. And we know that in order to develop this technology in New Brunswick, we need a lot of money. And we're working with our partners to attract federal funding and also private investment into the province. And so far, it's looking very promising. Can we go to the next one, please? And we're very thankful to the government of New Brunswick and NB Power for their vision and determination to lead the next generation nuclear technology development in Canada. So it is our commitment to the province that we're going to try to establish the R&D and manufacturing hub in the province. So our strategy is to look New Brunswick Brunswick first. So we always look for the manufacturing and R&D and engineering capability in New Brunswick first, and then we look into Canada, and then we look at the rest of the world. The next one, please. So last year we have done a supply chain analysis, and the analysis showed that we can actually manufacture 46% of the components in the province without spending too much investment in the capabilities. And if we want to invest more, and we can actually manufacture more items in New Brunswick. And this is only for manufacturing of components. And we have already started work with engineering service companies across the province and to give us support on the technology development side. So overall, we expect that our activity in the province can involve a lot of larger or small company or even individuals in the community. Can we go to the next one? So as I mentioned, our technology provides low-cost clean energy solution while reducing the nuclear waste and enable more renewables. And in our current activity in New Brunswick and other countries have demonstrated the strong support and momentum, both from the governments and the private sectors. And new nuclear in New Brunswick, we believe can play a major role in clean economic recovery post-COVID-19. And we intend to put the NB supply chain first. And next one, please. So if you have any question about our technology and what we can do for the climate, for the community, please do not hesitate to contact me. And if you have any question or interest in our supply chain opportunity, please contact our supply chain manager, Ivan. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Quinn. We really appreciate that. So we've had an overview from Paul Thompson from the standpoint of where New Brunswick and NB Power fit into from a Canadian perspective. And we just heard from Arc Nuclear Canada and Moltex Energy regarding two proponents that are based now in New Brunswick with the staff developing this technology here, and also the supply chain opportunities for companies. So we also have Opportunity in New Brunswick on board. And today it's represented by Jesse Graham. And Jesse, can you give us a little bit more information on how you're involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just give a minute for the slides to come up on the presentation here. I'd like to say a quick thank you to everyone who's presented before me, and also, of course, to the audience for joining us. We certainly appreciate your time this afternoon. I know everyone would probably enjoy to be out in the anticipated 39-degree weather. However, that is all good. So thank you for joining. And essentially what I'm going to discuss today is how we think of this opportunity at Opportunities New Brunswick and really maximizing that economic potential, not only within energy innovation itself, but specific to the nuclear assets that have been discussed in the previous presentations today. So for anyone that's not familiar with Opportunities New Brunswick, we're the lead economic development agency for the province. We have offices in Fredericton, St. John, Moncton, and some satellite offices throughout the province as well. However, we have a priority sector, which is energy. And of course, the nuclear opportunity within that is a pretty significant focus. And it's been made a significant focus by our province. So I'm going to discuss how we kind of view it and why we believe that New Brunswick is in such an amazing situation to take advantage of this opportunity. So when I think of this, I often come back to 4 pillars to why this really makes sense for us. The first one of those pillars is our uniquely skilled workforce here in the province. Just thinking in terms of our post-secondary academic institutions, at UNB, we have the research chair in nuclear engineering, which is Dr. Lister, and we also have the Center for Nuclear Energy Research at UNB as well by Dr. Cook. 2 amazing programs that are going to keep graduates coming out of not out of New Brunswick schools and staying hopefully within the province to be able to contribute to these sectors here. And then to complement that, we already have an existing workforce here that's been dedicated to the nuclear assets that we have in the province today, as well as the supply chain and manufacturing components that support those. So when you really think about it, it does make sense in terms of a workforce. We have that expertise in that area, and we have people coming out of the schooling pipeline, so to speak, that are ready and eager to work for that, and they're able to take advantage of that in their own home province, which is an awesome opportunity. The second pillar I'd like to discuss quickly is just our high quality infrastructure that we have in the province. You know, like I mentioned before, the nuclear assets that we have today, we have a grid and a system essentially set up that's designed to take advantage of that currently. And then to complement that, we have organizations like the Smart Grid Innovation Network, which is focusing on everything related to energy innovation, but also keeping a strong focus on these nuclear energy assets and integrating that into the grid as it becomes the bigger picture. New Brunswick also has a very reliable and established supply chain, as the previous vendors spoke about, that serve the energy and nuclear industries today. To complement that too, it's cost competitive and a fully serviced industrial infrastructure that's really ready to be developed upon further. And this is just another reason why this is such an awesome opportunity for the province here. The third pillar I'm going to discuss is our committed and agile government. So aside from Opportunities for Brunswick, which is the organization I belong to, we obviously have a focus on this and we've recognized it as a priority. But to complement that as well, we have the New Brunswick Energy Solutions Corporation, who's partnered with our two proponents in the province today. And they're working very hard to establish New Brunswick as a leader in this advanced nuclear reactor technology. Aside from that, New Brunswick, Ontario, and Saskatchewan have signed a memorandum of understanding to collaborate on this kind of development and deployment of these reactors going forward. And then to complement that even further, we have a strong ecosystem within the province today in cybersecurity, and that really kind of paints a wider picture and really benefits the nuclear assets that we have being developed today, because the cyber component can kind of take care of that securing critical infrastructure, which is really important for these opportunities to be fully realized. So when you think about it, just in terms of the level of government alignment, which is a very positive indicator for any external investment or companies that are coming from outside of the province here, they love knowing and seeing that we're aligned, we're on the same page, and we're thinking in the same direction. And it also aligns with the Canadian government thoughts as well. So it's really good to see that, and I believe that's going to pose New Brunswick to be in an excellent position to take advantage of this. And then my final pillar that I like to discuss would be our innovative utilities and private sector. You know, when you look at the work that MB Power does and the two proponents that have spoken today already, they're really doing incredible things, and they're making New Brunswick stand out when it comes to these nuclear assets. And I think people are becoming more and more aware of them as we continue to discuss them. So that's awesome. But then even to complement that further, we have the Amera and MB Power Research Center for Smart Grid Tech, which is established at the University of New Brunswick. And we also have Energy Ventures, which is a program designed to support energy-related and cyber-related startups, which really helps to contribute to that innovative capacity we have in the province, which really just is a welcome sign for any external investment and really poses a good opportunity for companies like ARC and Moltex to really succeed as they continue to develop within the province. So I'm going to move on to my next slide now, which basically addresses why now, why the future of clean, sustainable energy production needs to happen now, and why it can happen here with our strong history of nuclear energy expertise, manufacturing expertise, our centers of clean tech and entrepreneurship. Like, New Brunswick really has the components to be a leader on this new technology. With our post-secondary engineering programs, the focus on smart grids, cyber, and all those external pieces that really complement this nuclear sector, our institutions are really highly experienced in this, and we're ready to take advantage of it further. And then, of course, when we think of the energy mix in total, you know, we need to shift from fossil fuels. I don't think that can be disputed. And nuclear energy, especially on this advanced small modular reactor component, really fills a gap wherein we can shift from fossil fuels and really develop that baseload energy. And I mean, New Brunswick is just such an awesome place to research, develop, and then export your products to the world. It's going to have great impacts for the province, not only in terms of direct jobs, indirect jobs, but also, as Norm mentioned, you know, the tax incentives and benefits that come with that, as well as the increase in GDP. I mean, it's awesome when we can make things here and sell them to the rest of the world with our stamp and our proud name on it. So this opportunity really does apply to the nuclear industry as we see it, and it really is an unprecedented opportunity that we want to work as diligently as we can to take advantage of. So that's all I have for today. If anyone would like to chat with us a little further, we can be reached at ombcanada.ca. We have a page there for energy. Feel free to contact us if you'd like to take the chat offline. And thank you again to everyone for listening and for having me on the webinar today.
Thank you, Jesse. That was great. We can certainly see how you've been able to leverage sort of this Team New Brunswick approach, and that doesn't happen everywhere. But I think one of the things that we've been known for here in New Brunswick is everybody working together in a collaborative way. And I think what you've just pointed out really really focuses on that. So thanks very much.
And
but
thank
also
you for your work with the ACEA as well.
Oh, no problem at all. Also of importance too is that this development is Canadian leadership, and that's important. So in order for that to happen, local supporters like those that are participating today have to have their voices heard in Ottawa. There is a clear role for the Canadian government to support this technology development, in particular here in New Brunswick. So further to that, thanks very much for Paul and Norm and Quinn and Jesse. I'd like to ask Brett Plummer, the Chief Nuclear Officer of MB Power, to sort of summarize some of the key points that we've heard today.
Okay, thanks, Colleen. I'd like to thank all the participants for signing on today and learning about the opportunity of advanced small modular reactors in New Brunswick in Atlantic Canada. I'd also like to thank all the presenters and Colleen for an excellent job. And after listening to Jesse, I can't see how anybody wouldn't be enthusiastic. The development of advanced SMRs is critical to reaching the net zero 2050 for New Brunswick, Atlantic Canada, and Canada. We will not meet it without nuclear power. Advanced small modular reactors work with renewables. They provide a backup when the sun doesn't shine, the wind doesn't blow. Just look at the world and look who has been successful in decarbonizing, and you will find there's a mixture of renewables and nuclear. The development of advanced SMRs is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for economic development in Atlantic Canada and elsewhere in Canada. Based on the supply chain, you heard about the fleet support and potential exports. The advanced SMRs are clean, they're carbon-free. They provide the opportunity to significantly close the nuclear fuel cycle, and they have inherent safety features. The electricity from the advanced small modular reactors are projected to compete with very low-cost energy. Both advanced SMR vendors in New Brunswick complement each other. They're different reactors for different markets, and in the long term, we're going to need both reactors. There's a limited window of opportunity to take advantage of this. Small modular reactors are getting a lot of attention around the world. Other countries are starting to look at designs, modifying the regulatory systems, looking at applications. As the climate heats up, so does the activity around advanced small modular reactors. We need to act now, or we're going to lose this opportunity. We've worked very hard in New Brunswick with other utilities in Canada, Natural Resource Canada, the Canadian Nuclear Association, to develop a pan-Canadian approach, which involves the three streams mentioned in the presentations. A unified ask to the federal government to ensure all of Canada benefits from this approach. Private investment will be required to build these reactors, but we need federal support now in the way of funding, financial guarantees, and/or financial backstops. We needed to show the private sector investors that we're serious and committed. We need to de-risk these projects by removing some of the uncertainty. So now is the time to invest in New Brunswick, Atlantic Canada, and all of Canada. Please get involved, learn, educate yourselves in this opportunity. If there are any questions at all around the technology of the presentation today, please send an email to MB Power, to Claire Harris at charris, CHARRIS@nbpower.com. Thank you very much for listening. Back to you, Colleen.
Thanks very much, Brett. And thanks to all the presenters today, and in particular, thanks to everyone who took the time to listen today and to participate. I'm going to pass the baton back to Krista to wrap up on behalf of the Fredericton Chamber.
Thanks so much, Colleen. This has been an excellent presentation. It's been very educational and informative, and I know our members are going to be pretty excited about the many opportunities that are presented here. And of course, the Chamber's excited about the opportunity to have companies such as Moltex, Arc Nuclear, and even ACEA as new members of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. And I heard some mention of office space and staff, so we can support you in those regards as well. We love presenting opportunities to our members that will afford them supply chain opportunities and the ability to work with companies on these types of large projects. And we're as I mentioned, we have recorded this presentation and we will be sharing it on our social media, and we encourage you to share it with your networks because we believe this is a great opportunity for the province and our region. So thanks again to all of the speakers today. We really appreciate having the opportunity to host this event, and thanks Chamber members for attending. We'll see you at our next webinar.